All right, we're going to get started here. And as so let's see, a little bit of a preview. Hold on one second here. Let me turn that down a little bit. Lectern. Okay, that should be good. All right, so as a little bit of a preview today, as a reminder, what we're doing is we're going to be talking about our budget. We're also going to be talking about the Black Investment Fund, which passed council, and we're going to be signing that legislation here with everyone. And so we'll get into those details. As a heads up, I know, of course, we'll try and take whatever questions you have after, on a range of topics. But I do want to let you know tomorrow we are going to have a full corona update from the city of Albuquerque. This will happen, of course, after the governor's announcements this afternoon. So we'll give, as we usually do when the state announces stuff, the next day we'll give you sort of the Albuquerque side of the coin. So obviously, if you do have questions specifically around corona and so forth, really just better to wait till tomorrow because we'll have a lot more information from the state by then. Okay. So with that, let's get started. And first, we want to welcome everyone to Nexus Brew and Restaurant. And so Ken couldn't be with us today, but his sister-in-law is here, Teresa, and she's also the chairwoman of the Black Chamber of Commerce. Come on up.
Thank you so much, Mayor Keller. First and foremost, let me just take this opportunity to welcome you to Ken's Place, Nexus Blue. And also wanted to say that our Black-owned businesses are a major part and has been a big part of the Albuquerque's economy. And we're pleased to be receiving this opportunity. It is exciting to see council and mayor invest in our community. And we hope to see that this impact only grows this investment larger and that we are producing a greater return on investment. So again, thank you all very much.
All right, we have such a small gathering here. Appreciate the clapping. There's like 4 of us. But we're going to pretend there's 100 people here. By the way, the restaurant is closed right now, just in case people are going to ask us that. The restaurant is open tonight, but for lunch right now it is closed. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the budget. The pandemic obviously has had a devastating effect on every city and every business and everyone personally. And the city of Albuquerque is really no different. We've seen, of course, a decrease in tax and fee revenue that resulted in about a $30 million shortfall for our budget. And just as a real basic thing, our budget goes from July 1 to July 1. So we're talking about the end of the 2020 fiscal year, which just happened a few days ago. And recall our general strategy, which we worked with council on, and we're going to hear from some councilors here in just a minute. Because of the uncertainty, we had a rolling budget month to month, but we also need to close out the year. And so council was able to close out this budget last week, and we're going to sign that today. And fortunately, we were able to do that with a combination of 2 things. Number one was some belt tightening, whether it was through our hiring holdbacks or our travel restrictions and some of the other cost-cutting measures we were able to do. We were able to really trim the operating money in the budget. And we also, of course, relied heavily on our federal chunk of money that we got through the CARES Act. And so for us, this is a really good example of Albuquerque carving our own path. We know that whether it's Santa Fe or Rio Rancho or Boston or Los Angeles, every city has their own sort of fiscal situation, and Albuquerque is no different. And so we're handling this in a way that we think is best for our city. Now, we fought, and I personally fought with our Conference of Mayors for this CARES money. And I think, unfortunately, for other cities in New Mexico, we were the only city that received it. But we did get it. We got $150 million, and we desperately needed it. And as a reminder that it's really just correlated to the concept that these large metropolitan areas, especially in rural states, bear a burden from the entire region. And that's something that we've always taken responsibility for, but it does mean that whether it's the number of hospitals, the airport, even all our community programs, which are open to many folks from around the region, all of that is something that Albuquerque does that lifts up the rest of New Mexico. That even includes things like taking corona patients into our hospital system from outside the city, of course, which we've always done and will continue to do. But all of that drives up cost, whether it's first responders, whether it's our own emergency operations center, which coordinates activities for all central New Mexico. And so that's what this money is for, and so it is appropriately matched with the city that is bearing a lot of these costs. So we used some careful management of our city budget to try and make a difference. And before I hand it over, I want to talk about a special slice in this budget bill. And so we're going to hear from our budget chair in the latter half of this discussion. And next up, we're going to hear from the City Councilor who championed this concept of an investment fund to help the Black community. So inside this budget, we were able to use some of our reversion money to actually say that if you want to say Black Lives Matter and mean it, you also have to invest in changing the institutions and the structures that negatively impact those lives. And I think for us, that means doing what we can to do a little bit of a course correct in terms of there are a lot of communities and communities of color in our city that need our help. But actually, we have been doing a fairly good job with respect to especially our Hispanic communities, our immigrant communities, and even to a certain extent our Native American communities historically. One community that has been really left out when you compare them, and there are some studies on this, which the Black Chamber or the One Albuquerque Fund can provide. Unfortunately, disproportionately, we have really left out the African American community. And so for us, this is a way to provide $1 million in dedicated investment, a meaningful chunk that will hopefully move the needle for this community. And for us, too, it's a good reminder of that tricultural myth. We've had a very active, prosperous, engaged Black community here for over 100 years. And again, I'll let members from that community speak to that if folks have questions in the end, but it's something that a lot of us unfortunately have overlooked. And so part of this is also reminding everyone about that vibrant history, even right here in our own city. Now, this fund is going to be fully transparent. It's going to be audited and so forth through the city processes. And the usage of the dollars is going to be led by the community. And I think that's an important point. It was made time and time again that the community should decide what is the most helpful thing for the community instead of some government official telling the community what this money should be for. And that's also what makes this fund extra special. So to talk more about this, the sponsor of the amendment to the budget that created this fund, Councilor Clarissa Payton. Councilor.
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, Nick. So, I was really going to say probably almost exactly what the mayor said, having the opportunity to jump on this and put this amendment forward for the $1 million I thought was most appropriate. As you know, with some of the things that have been happening here at the city of Albuquerque, I think the Black Lives Matter movement, which really talks about systemic and institutional racism, kind of took a turn when we started talking about removing statues and this or that, and for me, I looked at it as not just for Black Lives Matter, but I looked at it for other communities of color and an opportunity to kind of really pivot back to where we need to be and to be addressing those issues. And as the mayor stated, looking at our budget, we do give money to the Hispanic communities, we do give money to the Native American communities, not nowhere where we need to be. But then to look at the African American community, Black community, and see that we even give less, I see this as an excellent opportunity, and the mayor had a great idea of just bringing this forward, and I look forward to getting back on track in terms of the dialogue of social and institutional racism and systemic racism, and I hope this is a start in that direction. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Councilor. And make sure here we're on track. So I want to mention that councilors voted the other night again to use, so now to talk about the budget as a whole, part of this was also using about a third of the CARES money, roughly. And so we've spent that, we used that to balance the budget, we tightened our belts, we did some cost cutting. And I know there are questions about, well, what do we do going forward? Well, what we've set up is a framework so that we have this cushion available for the other 2/3 of those dollars to get us through the next fiscal year. And so I think we're cautiously optimistic about where we're at least through December. But we are going to be working with council on the next budget process. And so we're going to start that when council comes back in August. As is required, the city will be sending down somewhere in that time frame our budget recommendations. There'll be the usual public process and so forth and markups, and council will eventually come up with a budget that they're comfortable with. Legally, by the end of the year, we're hoping for October. And so what we are doing today, though, is just at least acknowledging the fact that, because of council's hard work, and we're lucky to have a chairman in charge of the Committee of the Whole, which produces the budget. Experienced Ike Benton knows the ins and outs of this budget, and I think has just been a steady hand on the tiller when we need it. Now is not the time to be making wild decisions in the budget, and we avoided doing that. And so we appreciate his steadiness and the fact that we were able to avoid layoffs and avoid furloughs that have happened in almost every other city. Now, again, we have visibility for another 6 months, and then we may have to do furloughs and layoffs. We're just going to have to see how much the economy has rebounded. But we will face those challenges when they come, and today we will celebrate that we did not have to lay anyone off yet. And with that, the chairman of the Budget Committee, known as the Council of the Whole, Councilor Ike Benton.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Councilor Pena, for having brought forth this fund to support the Black community and Black enterprise in our city. I just want to say, obviously, this has been a tough year for all of us, and as chairman of the Committee of the Whole, we're really in a place now. And I want to thank the mayor, and I want to thank CFO Bacta also for the imaginative use of our federal relief funds. And we're kind of playing it by ear, month to month. It's very hard to even analyze where we are in terms of revenue, because that's really 2 months back. And sometimes the revenue we receive from the state, our fair share of the state revenues that come in from gross receipts tax is difficult sometimes to even know where in a normal year where we're going to be from month to month. But in this case, we've got some good people at the helm, I would say, in the administration that's been very smart about this, and I appreciate that. And just a quick shout out to I'm gonna shout out to South Broadway and Kirtland neighborhoods, which are both in District 2. And appreciate Mr. Carson's reinvestment. He has came up in this part of town, and he's investing in it again. It's great to see that, and great to see Nexus down here on South Broadway. But these are great, as the mayor said, these are great, long-standing parts of Albuquerque's community. Some people have moved and scattered all over the city and no longer live in this immediate area, but it still has a terrific history. And I always like to, my story I always enjoy telling is about the Mirror Lounge, which only old-timers could remember, people like me. The Mirror Lounge was down near the old Coca-Cola bottling plant downtown, and it was a Black-owned business. Bobby Foster, former middle heavyweight champ of Albuquerque, was one of the investors there. And when I first came to Albuquerque as a young man, it was a really cool place to go hang out, listen to jazz, and late into the night. but those kind of the legacy of Albuquerque, of Blacks in our community, cannot be forgotten. And so I'm very happy that we were able to get this fund together, and that it will help move other Black businesses forward and other parts of the Black community in Albuquerque. So thanks everybody for being here, and onward and upward.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Councilor Benton. And, all of the councilors too have just really spoken to this general notion that, we know in our city we've got to champion who we are as a city. And that means by far and away recognizing our vast diversity, but also the challenges that a lot of our communities of color are having, and addressing those long-standing issues that also Clarissa Pena mentioned around structural racism. And so for us, we're going to do a couple of things. We need to actually sign this, and so if you'd like to come up for a picture, you don't have to, but if you want to kind of circle around, you can. I want to introduce some people as we get to question and answers. So Alex Horton is here. He works with our small business office and also the International District Business Development Center. And so he's available for your questions. Also Cynthia Jaramillo, who is our Director of Economic Development. So these are two folks who are also involved with this Black Investment Fund. And we also have our CFO here. So I think, one of these guys who continues to find a way to keep our city running and to make the investments that we need, and just does an outstanding job as our CFO. So we're very grateful for Sanjay Bhakta too. Okay, so with that, we have 4 souvenir pens. If you don't want them, that's okay too. But if you do want a souvenir bill signing pen, we'll have 4 for you. So come on up if anyone's interested. Okay, and is it the 8th, or was that yesterday? 9th? Okay. All right. Okay. There's, Clarissa, we have a lot. We might give them to guests first. That's okay. Okay. Alex, there you go. And appreciate Alex, too, helped to advocate and educate with respect to this bill. All right, let's see. I think we're good. So, Ike, how do you feel?
I got plenty.
You have plenty? Keep one. All right. All right, nice. I think we're good then. Nice bill signing pen. Pretty cool. All right, look at that bonus. Okay. There you go. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Congrats on a good budget. All right, so with that, we're here. We'll, as usual, Jesse can kind of help moderate so our online folks can get through if they have questions.
We'll start with one from the journal, and then we'll move to in-person questions. Joseph Adair with Albuquerque Journal is asking, why is the city using one Albuquerque fund as a middleman instead of directly dispersing the funds to organizations as it did recently with the $1 million in grants to assist local nonprofits during the pandemic?
Yeah, so the question is sort of the role, what the fund is stepping up to do is to coordinate the community criteria for what the fund will be used for. And again, that's the city's supporting foundation, just like the CNM Foundation or the UNM Foundation. The funds may or may not flow through them. Actually, I think it depends. We might do exactly what we did before. And let me just check with Sanjay on that. Yeah, so we can go either direction, whatever's the most helpful for the community.
I know you said that it'll be up to the community to decide how we spend this money, but what are some examples of how we would spend it? Would it just be small business? Would it be giving funds directly to members of our Black community?
Yeah, so this is a good question. I'm going to tee up either Teresa or Alex or both to maybe provide some examples. But I want to mention again what the role of the fund. And, just to make it clear, just because he couldn't make it today, but the head of the fund is an African American. And so Charles Ashley is convening this community leaders to answer your question. And I do believe they're having a board meeting tomorrow, and then they are going to be able be in a place where they can speak with you directly to answer your question. So we can certainly give you some examples, but I want to kind of let you know how that's playing out. And so I think after tomorrow, they'll have their ducks in a row to just work with you directly on that. What else would you guys like to
I
add?
agree with you. I
Okay.
really have to let them kind of work it out. And that's
Yeah.
where we're at.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree, and I also feel that being that the investment comes in and then it can kind of get diluted, they really want to see how is the highest impact of this fund making an impact in the community and using all the metrics. So doing like the due diligence process with this funds and being accountable for this money that they've allotted, I think we really want to make sure we do a good job and being stewards of the money as well.
A follow-up I have on that is just, a lot of the members of our Black community have felt ignored in this country and ignored here. I mean, would you say that this is a form of reparation operations, or?
Well, I think this is what is so powerful about this fund for Albuquerque, and also we're fortunate to have the foundation set up in a sense that they can convene this. So I think it is certainly a version of trying to say we've got to have real investment, not just tokenism. $1 million is obviously a lot of money, but look, there's needs for multiple millions. So it's just basically what we could afford now. And so I would also ask that question again to the council and Charles at the fund. And this is also, I think, important why I want to be clear. None of us are trying to avoid the question you're asking. The point is the community is supposed to answer that question, not the mayor. So that's what this is all about. I do want to mention, too, Jessica mentioned from the Journal, I just thought of another aspect of your question. So just to go back to that, the key part of the fund here is they are going to raise matching funds. They would like to. So the great thing about having this foundation in place is they are going to go out to the private sector and say, would you like to invest also with this money? So the city money is supposed to be matching money. And so legally they're able to do that because they're a foundation. And again, fortunately, too, we can honor that black voice because of Charles's role as chairman. Other questions? All right, well, we appreciate it. Remember, also support all our small businesses and our black-owned businesses. And we will see you tomorrow for All Things Corona. Thank you so much.